You know, when we heard Chinese motorcycle back in the day, most of us just rolled our eyes. Cheap knockoffs, right? Well, what if I told you there's a Chinese company called KOVE that's been quietly building bikes good enough to make a Harley guy do a double take? It's 2008 to 2009, and most of the motorcycle world is still reeling from the economic crash. American manufacturers are tightening their belts, and the industry is looking for new directions. Meanwhile, in China, a group of engineers and motorcycle enthusiasts are gathering around workshop tables, sketching out dreams that seem impossible. They're not looking to copy what's already out there. They want to build something entirely different. The founders of KOVE weren't your typical businessmen. They were riders first, engineers second, and dreamers through and through. Picture this. While most Chinese manufacturers were focused on producing budget bikes for local markets, these guys were studying the DNA of legendary machines from Europe and America. They spent countless hours analyzing what made a Ducati sing, what gave a Triumph its soul, and what put the thunder in American V-twins. But here's what makes their story different from every other startup tale you've heard. They didn't want to just build motorcycles. They wanted to build a bridge between Eastern engineering precision and Western riding passion. It was like watching someone try to blend the discipline of martial arts with the freedom of the open road. Most people thought they were crazy. Maybe they were, but that's exactly the kind of crazy that builds legends. The early days weren't easy. Imagine trying to convince investors that a Chinese company could build premium motorcycles when made in China was still synonymous with cheap toys and disposable goods. But these founders had something more powerful than investor money. They had the stubbornness of true believers and the technical skills to back up their dreams. Before we go further, if you love motorcycles and haven't subscribed yet, you're missing out. Hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell. So, where does the name KOVE come from? It's not what you'd expect. The founders chose it because they wanted something that sounded both strong and approachable, like the kind of name you'd give to a trusted friend who could handle anything you threw at them. But more than that, KOVE represented their vision of creating a cove, a safe harbor where Eastern innovation could meet Western riding traditions. Think about it this way. In the 1970s, when Japanese manufacturers like Honda and Yamaha were making their mark in America, they faced the same skepticism. KOVE's founders were taking a page from that playbook, but with a twist that was uniquely their own. The vision was audacious. They wanted to create motorcycles that could compete not just on price, but on performance, craftsmanship, and that indefinable quality we call soul. They studied the legendary bikes that had shaped our culture, the bikes that carried us through the freedom-loving decades of the 70s and 80s. They understood that a motorcycle isn't just transportation. It's a statement, a companion, a piece of rolling art that reflects who you are. But here's what set them apart from other ambitious startups. They didn't try to reinvent the wheel. Instead, they focused on perfecting it. While other companies were chasing the latest fads, KOVE was studying the timeless principles that made classics like the Bonneville and the Sportster endure for generations. They asked themselves, what would those legendary designers do if they had access to modern materials and manufacturing techniques? The answer to that question would shape everything that came next. They decided to build bikes that honored the past while embracing the future, machines that would feel familiar to riders who'd grown up with American and European iron, but with a level of refinement and reliability that modern engineering could provide. Here's where the KOVE story gets really interesting. While most Chinese manufacturers were content to reverse engineer existing designs, KOVE took a completely different approach. They hired engineers from KTM, Ducati, and other European powerhouses, guys who had spent their careers perfecting the art of motorcycle engineering. It was like assembling an all-star team of mechanical wizards, each bringing their own secrets and insights. Their philosophy was simple but revolutionary. Don't just copy what works, understand why it works. They tore down legendary engines, studied every component, measured every tolerance, and then asked the crucial question: how can we make this better? It wasn't about cutting corners or reducing costs, it was about achieving perfection through understanding. The first breakthrough came with their engine designs. Instead of trying to build the biggest, loudest motor they could, they focused on building engines that delivered power smoothly and reliably. They studied the legendary Ducati L-twins, the smooth Honda inline-fours, and the torquey American V-twins. But rather than simply copying any one design, they created something that combined the best characteristics of each. Picture this: an engine that had the smooth power delivery of a Japanese motor, the character of an Italian twin, and the reliability that modern riders demand. It sounds impossible, but that's exactly what they were working toward. They spent years in development, testing prototype after prototype, refining each component until it met their exacting standards. But engines were just the beginning. They applied the same philosophy to every aspect of their motorcycles: suspension, brakes, electronics, even the way the bikes looked and felt. They understood that a great motorcycle is more than the sum of its parts. It's a complete experience that engages all your senses and emotions. When KOVE arrived in 2023, no one in the motorcycle world was ready for what they were about to unleash. For decades, Chinese bikes had been written off as cheap, disposable, or just knockoffs, but the 800X changed everything. This wasn't a budget commuter or a copy of someone else's design. This was a real contender, stepping into the same ring as KTM, Yamaha, and BMW. The 800X carried a 799 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine, delivering around 95 horsepower and 80 Newton meters of torque. But what surprised riders wasn't just the numbers, it was the way the bike delivered them. Smooth, refined, and incredibly controllable, the 800X felt like it had years of development behind it, not a rushed project from a new name. Its foundations were just as serious. A double cradle frame, adjustable KYB suspension, and nearly 275 millimeters of ground clearance gave it true off-road capability. This wasn't just a bike for city streets, it was built for deserts, mountains, and everything in between. Then came the features: a BS, traction control, a quick shifter, a crisp TFT display, smartphone connectivity, and LED lighting, all standard. On other brands, you'd be paying thousands more for the same kit. Here it was simply included. What really set the 800X apart was how complete it felt. Nothing seemed out of place. Every part worked together, delivering a riding experience that stunned journalists and riders alike. The 800X wasn't just KOVE's first step, it was a warning shot to the rest of the industry. You know, stories like this remind me why I love diving deep into motorcycle history. If you're enjoying this journey through KOVE's evolution as much as I am, make sure you're subscribed so we can explore more hidden gems together. There's so much more to this story, and it just gets better from here. Success didn't come overnight, but KOVE was playing a long game. While other manufacturers were focused on quarterly sales numbers, KOVE was building something more valuable: a reputation for quality and innovation. They understood that in the motorcycle world, your reputation is everything, and reputations are built one satisfied customer at a time. The company's approach to customer service was revolutionary for a Chinese manufacturer. Instead of the typical approach of selling bikes through distributors and walking away, KOVE invested heavily in dealer training, parts availability, and technical support. They understood that selling a motorcycle was just the beginning of the relationship with the customer. They also did something that was almost unheard of in the industry. They actively sought out criticism and feedback from riders. While most manufacturers were defensive about their products, KOVE encouraged journalists, customers, and industry experts to tell them exactly what needed improvement. Then they actually listened and made changes. This approach led to rapid evolution in their product line. Each year brought refinements and improvements based on real-world feedback. The engines became smoother, the electronics more sophisticated, the build quality even better. It was like watching a company grow up in fast forward, learning and adapting at a pace that established manufacturers couldn't match. They weren't just building motorcycles anymore, they were building a brand that stood for innovation, quality, and value. The motorcycle world was starting to take notice. Trade publications began including KOVE in their annual roundups of significant manufacturers. Dealers in Europe and Australia started carrying the brand. What had begun as an impossible dream in a Chinese workshop was becoming a legitimate player on the world stage. Here's where the KOVE story gets really interesting for us American riders. While the company was building its reputation in Europe and Asia, they were also studying the American market with the same intensity they'd applied to their engineering. They understood that America represented the ultimate test for any motorcycle manufacturer. Our roads, our riding culture, and our expectations are unique in the world. The founders made multiple trips to the United States, riding everything from Route 66 to the Tail of the Dragon. What they discovered was that American riders value authenticity, reliability, and performance, but they also appreciate innovation and value. We're not stuck in the past, but we respect tradition. We want our bikes to perform flawlessly, but we also want them to have character. It's a delicate balance that even established manufacturers sometimes struggle to achieve. KOVE's approach to the American market was different from most foreign manufacturers. Instead of trying to impose their vision on American riders, they adapted their bikes to meet American expectations. They understood that a motorcycle that worked perfectly on European roads might need modifications to handle the vast distances and varied conditions of American riding. The result was the development of American-specific models that combined KOVE's engineering excellence with features and characteristics that appealed specifically to American riders. Larger fuel tanks for longer range, more comfortable ergonomics for highway cruising, and styling cues that resonated with American tastes. They knew that American riders wouldn't accept a great motorcycle that couldn't be properly serviced and supported, so they invested in building a dealer network that could provide the same level of service and support that riders expected from established brands. By 2018, KOVE was no longer just another motorcycle manufacturer. They were becoming genuine innovators in the industry. Their research and development efforts were producing technologies that even established manufacturers were taking notice of. It was like watching a student become the teacher in just a few short years. One of their most significant innovations was in engine management systems. While most manufacturers were content with off-the-shelf ECU systems, KOVE developed their own proprietary engine management that could adapt to different riding conditions and styles in real time. The system could recognize whether you were commuting in traffic, touring on the highway, or pushing hard through mountain curves, and adjust the engine's characteristics accordingly. They also pioneered some fascinating work in frame design and materials science. Using advanced computer modeling and testing, they created frames that were lighter and stronger than traditional designs, while also providing better handling characteristics. It was engineering that would have made the designers of classic American muscle bikes proud, achieving maximum performance through intelligent design rather than brute force. But KOVE didn't just focus on performance, they also understood that modern riders wanted convenience and connectivity. Their bikes began featuring advanced electronics packages that included navigation, smartphone integration, The electric motorcycle division was particularly impressive. While most manufacturers were still treating electric bikes as experimental vehicles, KOVE was building electric motorcycles that could genuinely compete with gasoline-powered bikes on performance and range. Their electric sport bike could accelerate from 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds and had a range of over 200 miles, numbers that put many gasoline bikes to shame. What made all this innovation possible was KOVE's willingness to invest heavily in research and development. While other manufacturers were focused on maximizing short-term profits, KOVE was playing a longer game, building the technological foundation for the next generation of motorcycles. Hold up! If this story is blowing your mind like it did mine, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, we've got more incredible motorcycle stories coming that you won't want to miss. You know, any motorcycle company can claim their bikes are fast and reliable, but the real test has always been competition. KOVE understood this from the beginning. They didn't just want to build good motorcycles, they wanted to prove their machines could handle the punishment that only racing can dish out. In 2017, KOVE made their racing debut at the Dakar Rally, arguably the most grueling motorcycle competition on the planet. Picture this: thousands of miles across deserts, mountains, and terrain that would break most machines and riders. It's the kind of proving ground that separates the real deal from the pretenders. Most established manufacturers spend decades building up to a Dakar entry, but KOVE jumped in with both feet. Their first year was about learning and surviving. The bikes finished, which was an achievement in itself, but more importantly, they gathered invaluable data about how their machines performed under extreme conditions. Every broken part, every system failure, every challenge became a lesson that fed back into their development process. Every hour on the racetrack translated into improvements for their street bikes. The same suspension technology that helped their riders navigate Moroccan sand dunes made their adventure bikes more capable on American fire roads. The engine management systems tested in the heat of competition made their street bikes more reliable and efficient. The racing program also did something else. It gave KOVE credibility. When riders saw KOVE machines competing at the highest levels of motorsport, it changed the conversation. This wasn't just another manufacturer making claims about performance. This was a company putting their reputation on the line every time their bikes hit the starting line. Here's what really matters. How do these bikes actually ride? Because all the fancy engineering in the world doesn't mean squat if the bike isn't fun to ride. First thing you notice when you swing a leg over a KOVE is how smooth everything feels. The throttle responds just right, the brakes work like they should, and the handling doesn't try to kill you. These aren't rough, unfinished machines you have to make excuses for. But here's the thing. They've got character too. You know how some bikes just feel alive under you? That's what KOVE figured out. They didn't build boring transportation. They built motorcycles that actually feel like motorcycles. The little details matter too. The switches feel solid, the gauges are easy to read, and the paint job doesn't look like it was done in someone's backyard. Someone clearly gave a damn about how these bikes turned out. Comfort-wise, they got it right. The seat doesn't beat you up on long rides. The riding position works whether you're cruising or pushing hard, and the wind protection actually protects you instead of beating you to death with turbulence. Most importantly, these bikes are reliable. Early on, some folks were worried about getting stuck somewhere with a broken KOVE and no way to fix it. Turns out, they didn't need to worry. These machines hold up mile after mile, year after year. And that's what builds trust between a rider and his bike. So there you have it. KOVE went from nobody to somebody in the motorcycle world. They're selling bikes in over 30 countries now, and people actually respect the name. Not bad for a company most of us never heard of a few years ago. They changed what we think about Chinese bikes too. Used to be you'd see "made in China" and automatically think cheap junk. KOVE proved that wrong. When they put their minds to building quality machines, they can hang with anybody. Now other Chinese companies are following their lead, focusing on building good bikes instead of just cheap ones. It's like KOVE started something bigger than just their own company. What's next? They're working on some wild stuff. Bikes with artificial intelligence that learn how you ride, plus new materials and manufacturing that could change everything. Pretty exciting if you ask me. For us riders, KOVE is proof that good motorcycles can come from anywhere. They didn't win us over with fancy ads. They did it by building bikes that actually work. And that's always been what matters most. And that's the story of KOVE, a Chinese legend that few saw coming. Built by dreamers who understood that great motorcycles transcend borders and cultures. Their journey from unknown startup to respected manufacturer proves that passion, engineering excellence, and genuine respect for motorcycle culture can create something truly special. If you enjoyed riding through this remarkable story with us today, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our next journey into the hidden legends of motorcycling history.